Hello and welcome once again to another lesson for studying for the GED Social Studies exam. Today our topic is the Civil Rights Movement. And as you can see behind me, we are at one of the famous speeches from the one and only Martin Luther King Jr. You might have heard about Martin Luther King. He was a fantastic public speaker, and he was very passionate about a movement called the Civil Rights Movement here in the United States. And so we're going to take a look into what is the Civil Rights Movement, where did it come from, and what were some of the things they were fighting for, and what are we still fighting for today. So come, let's take a look. Right, so the Civil Rights Movement, the word civil itself means people. Just like a civil war is the war of the people, it's people from the same country fighting. So civil rights are literally the rights for the people, people's rights. We've seen the evolution of different civil rights throughout American history. We saw after the Civil War that the enslaved Africans were then, slavery was abolished. That was a civil rights issue, making this Black enslaved population, once they were free, making them US citizens, which was a civil rights issue, allowing Black males the right to vote. We saw then at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, were women's, at the end of the women's era, women getting the rights to vote, which again was a civil rights issue. So civil rights is the idea of fighting for rights of the people. Now, some of us may think, but yet slavery was abolished way back at the end of the Civil War in the 1800s. Why in the middle of the 1900s, 100 years later, are all these people protesting about civil rights? Well, the thing is that there wasn't a lot of equality among the Black population and the white population in the United States at this time. So looking at the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and a little bit of the 70s of the United States, let's look at some of our history. During this time period, in the beginning of the 20th century, our society had a movement called segregation. Segregation, where there were facilities for colored people, is what they called it, or the African American population, and there was areas for the white population. We see public bathrooms. Here we see examples of drinking fountains for whites, drinking fountains for colored, waiting rooms, even parts of the bus. This section of the bus is for colored customers. This section of the bus is for the white customers. And the problem is we see a lot of this hate, this racism, this inequality of, and just this mindset of, we are better than you, we are superior to you. And this separation, this segregation really allowed that to continue, because a lot of the facilities that were set aside for the white population were better. They were better funded, cleaner, more organized, easier to access, and it really kept this disparity of, we're better than you. Which really, it was more about, we have more access than you. We have easier and quicker access to resources than a colored individual at this time period. And so some great movies that really highlight this period. One that I think is a fantastic movie that really touches on what it was like to be an African American during the segregation movement, but then also what was it like to be an African American woman. So we see this intersectionality, this idea of two minorities crossing, right? There's the aspect of being colored, being African American, but then also being a woman. And what was it like to be an educated, hardworking individual, but yet be Black and a woman during this time period? Hidden Figures is a fantastic movie. Let's watch the trailer.
Equilateral, trapezoid, isosceles, tetrahedron.
I've never seen a mind like the one your daughter has. You have to see what she becomes.
Come on! Move like that.
Catherine, we all gonna end up unemployed riding around in this pile of junk.
You're welcome to walk the 16 miles.
Or sit in the back of the bus.
You kiss me up.
You have identification on it?
We're just on our way to work at NASA, sir.
I had no idea they hired.
There are quite a few women working in the space program.
we're doing here? We're putting a human on top of a missile, shooting him into space, and it's never been done before. I need a mathematician that can look beyond the numbers. Math that doesn't yet exist. Before the Russians plant a flag on the damn moon.
You have someone?
Running what I'm playing.
Catherine's the gal for that. She can handle any numbers you put in front of her.
Don't embarrass me.
This wasn't emptied last night?
I'm sorry, I'm not the...
That Colonel Jim is a tall glass of water.
He's coming over.
Now, why would he be doing that?
Cause Mary's waving at me.
No!
Dorothy, slice of pie?
I love one.
You already have a slice of pie, do it.
Oh, left and left about it.
You're a computer at NASA. They let women handle that sort of...
Yes, it's an uphill battle.
Yes, they let women do some things at NASA, Mr. Johnson. And it's not because we wear skirts. It's because we wear glasses.
We go from being our father's daughters to our husband's wives to our baby's mothers.
You've been gone for 300 hours.
Was Mama gone for 12 and a half days?
No, but it felt like it.
It felt like it to me, too.
It's crunch time. In 14 days, astronauts will be here for training. Everything we do can matter to their wives, to their children. I believe it's going to matter to the whole damn country.
My gals are ready. We can do the work. That's John Glenn.
What do you ladies do for NASA?
Calculate launch and landing, sir.
Engineering. And I'm proud as the devil to be working with you.
How could you possibly be ogling these white men?
It's equal rights. I have the right to see fine in Africa.
There's no protocol for women attending.
There's no protocol for a man circling the earth either, sir.
Every time we have a chance to get ahead, they move the finish line. Every time.
We all get there together, we don't get there at all.
It's good to know NASA hadn't given up on good old-fashioned brain power.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let me ask you, if you were a white male, would you wish to be an engineer?
I wouldn't have to. I'd already be one.
Don't you know that we're able?
So that was the trailer for the movie Hidden Figures, which is a fantastic movie and I highly recommend it. One of the more powerful scenes that I think really sticks out to me was there was this scene where their supervisor was questioning, like, why is it taking them so long to get back from coming to the bathroom? And he didn't realize that since they were African American, they were only allowed to use the bathroom design for the colored workers, which was way over in another building, way down in the basement, and really terrible. And they would literally have to run. You see a few scenes where she's just like running, and that's literally what's happening. She's having to run all the way over to another building, go to the bathroom, and then run all the way back. And the white workers were just unaware of the fact that that's actually what they were going through and had to go through. Really powerful scene in the movie. Another movie I highly recommend is The Help, which kind of shows a lot of the same thing, this social disparity between African-American maids working in the homes of white families. And you really see this beautiful relationship develop among the young children, these white children that these black nannies are actually raising. Because since they are there in their lives, these young children really kind of create these awesome connections and bonds with these women and see them as, no, they're human beings. There's nothing about them that makes them more or less inferior or superior. We're all equal. We're all human beings. And the children can really see that. Where for the parents, it's really hard because the parents really have that mindset of, no, we're better than you. We are superior to you simply because of the color of our skin. And the youth are the ones that are starting to break down a lot of those prejudice and stereotypes of like, no, we're all equal. It's also another fantastic book and a fantastic movie that I highly recommend. Here's the trailer.
Sorry I'm late.
We didn't ever think you'd leave Ole Miss.
It does take 4 years, Jolene. I got a job today, writing for the Jackson Journal.
Great. You can write my obituary. Charlotte Phelan, dead. Her daughter, still single.
Does
this dress look homemade?
I reckon when you finish it won't.
Thank you.
She looked like the winning horse at the Kentucky Derby.
I've drafted the Home Health Sanitation Initiative.
The what?
A bill that requires every white home to have a separate bathroom for the help.
Maybe we should just build you a bathroom outside, Haley.
Minnie? Hey, Abilene.
Hey, Minnie. These women raise white children. We love them and they love us, but they can't even use the toilets in our houses.
Minnie, are you in there?
You are fired! You said to write about what disturbs me, particularly if it bothers no one else. I'd like to write something from the point of view of the help.
I want to interview you.
No maid is ever going to tell you the truth. That's a hell of a risk to take in Jackson, Mississippi.
Courage isn't just about being brave. It's about overcoming fear and daring to do what is right for your fellow man.
What changed your mind?
God. And Miss Haley Holbrook.
I'm gonna help with your stories.
We all are.
Y'all brought me into this, but I'm gonna finish it.
Have you lost your mind?
No, ma'am, but you about to.
It's quite scandalous. Sounds like Jackson, if you ask me.
You tell Abilene. Do I have plans for her?
You a godless woman. We gonna done it now.
So another great movie, really just kind of showing what the African American population is going through in the middle of the 20th century that kind of sparks this civil rights movement that we see Martin Luther King being the head of. Another movie that we're not going to watch the trailer of, but I want to talk to briefly, a great movie is Remember the Titans, which shows this school where for the first time white children and African American children are going to school for the first time. And it shows a lot of that tension that was happening about them going to school. And it focuses on a football team where you see this really beautiful relationship start to develop, where you see these African American students and these Caucasian students working together as a team because they are a team and they're having to live together, stay in the student dorms together, and make these beautiful friendships where before they were really never given an opportunity to break down those barriers of stereotypes and prejudice and really get to know each other as human beings. But this story really talks about a court case called Brown versus the Board of Education. And this was the court case that ended racial segregation for schools. It says it was a landmark decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, which the court ruled that U.S. state laws establishing racial segregation in public schools are unconstitutional, even if the segregated schools are otherwise equal in quality. That it is unconstitutional to have separate schools. If this school is only for white students and this school is only for colored students, this was illegal in 1954. So let's start looking at what is going on. So here is a speech from the former Alabama governor, who is the leader of the state of Alabama, which is one of the states in the South, referring to, and it's mentioning the Civil Rights Act. So, from a speech of former Alabama Governor George Wallace, July 4th, 1964, following the passage of the Civil Rights Act. Never before in history of this nation has so many human and property rights have been destroyed by a single enactment of Congress. It is an act of tyranny. It is an assassin's knife stuck in the back of liberty. I am having nothing to do with enforcing a law that will destroy our free enterprise system. I am having nothing to do with enforcing a law that will destroy neighborhood schools. I am having nothing to do with enforcing a law that will destroy the rights of private property. I am having nothing to do with this so-called civil rights bill. So looking at this passage, is the governor of Alabama supporting this idea of civil rights, or is thinking this is a bad idea? It says it's an act of tyranny, an assassin's knife. It's going to destroy our freedom. It's going to destroy neighborhood schools. That sending black kids and white kids to the same school, it's just going to destroy it. We're going to destroy private property. They're just going to destroy everything. Do you see the mindset here? He is clearly against the Civil Rights Act. And it's that same mindset and perspective of we are better than you, we are superior to you. And that was happening in 1964 by the actual governor of the state making these types of comments. And they really believed that by allowing Black students and white students to go to the same school, that it was literally destroying the free enterprise. And one discussion question to think of is, how did the United States society change and evolve? There were all these issues that we're seeing happening, like we saw in those two movies, in those trailers, like we also saw in the movie Remember the Titans. How did people respond? Was it more peacefully, or was it violent, or was it a mix of both? And we actually see a mix of both. We see these very peaceful protests. Martin Luther King, behind me, one of his biggest selling points was the idea of the need for peaceful protesting. They cannot meet violence with violence. Violence just breeds more violence. He was like, you have to do it peacefully. But there were a lot of people that were fed up with being treated this way and actually relied on violence to get their message across. One particular group that we see come out of this is the Black Panther movement in New York. And again, that same thing, just like the suffrage movements, the suffragettes, was well-behaved women rarely make history. If you want something changed, you kind of have to take it and do it now. So it was this mindset of violence helps you get what you want, but it is this mix of finding that balance. Was it peaceful? Was it violent? Martin Luther King really believed in you need to stick with peaceful protesting. James Meredith was one of the first African-American males to be allowed in an all-white university. And he took it all the way to the Supreme Court, to the courts, and was saying, hey, I'm smart, I'm educated, I'm very good at what I do, but this university only allows white students. I have the right as a human being to pursue higher education, and they should allow me to pursue education. And he was allowed to go, but because of the controversy and because of his safety, they had a whole team of military police escorting him all over campus to and from, because there were so many people that were wanting to stop him from pursuing that because they felt it wasn't his place. So let's read. When a person stands his ground and demands that his civil rights be respected, history can be made. When James Meredith sought to become the first African American to attend the University of Mississippi in 1962, it was the duty of 127 federal marshals from across the country to risk their lives and uphold the law, thereby allowing Mr. Meredith to enroll. When the university tried to deny him admission, a federal court ordered the university to desecrate and allow Mr. Meredith to enroll. When Mississippi's governor attempted to block Mr. Meredith's enrollment, President John Kennedy, the administration, ordered federal marshals to accompany Mr. Meredith to the university. Violence erupted when white students reacted with hostility towards the marshals. 2 people died and hundreds were injured in the fighting. So all of this conflict over one student who's African American simply wanting to go to the university. That is how much tension was happening in this time period in the 1960s, which is almost 100 years after the Civil War and the abolishment of slavery. For a year, the marshals provided Mr. Meredith with 24-hour protection, accompanying him on campus and enduring the same heckling and taunts as Mr. Meredith did. The courageous actions of Mr. Meredith and the marshals ensured that Mr. Meredith could attend the school of his choice. Let me go back to the political cartoon here. So here we see Mississippi grand jury. We see it there. Here we see the U.S. Marshals. Remember, they were getting injured, they were getting hurt, they were getting taunted along with him. And they said, and you insisted those incidents riots to violence. Based on the reasoning represented in this cartoon, which of the following would the Mississippi state government most likely support? Would the Mississippi state government support diversity in the university student population, federal oversight of the state action, separate but equal schools for different races, or police officers sanctioned at all times inside of schools? What would you want? First off, let's see if we can eliminate some of the answers. First off, A, diversity of students. I would say no, they didn't support it. They didn't want the African American students coming in. They did not want Mr. Meredith to come to their class. It supports the federal oversight of the state actions. Police officers stationed at all times inside the schools. If we look at the cartoon, here we see Mississippi grand jury, which is the state, not the federal. And so I would really say that they didn't support the federal of the marshals coming in. They did not like that. And then do they support the police officers stationed at all times? I'll also say no there. They were really supporting the idea of separate but equal schools. They did not want the colored African-American students coming in and having school at the same time with the Caucasian students. They wanted to keep them equal. Say, all right, this is a school for students that are African American. This is a school for whites, and we're going to keep them separate, but they have the same amount of resources, supposedly. On whose use of faulty reasoning does the cartoonist focus this cartoon on? James Meredith, the federal court, the Kinney administration, or the Mississippi court system? Again, words are important. What words do we see in our cartoon? I see the Mississippi grand jury, and so our answer is, if you said D, the Mississippi court system, you are correct. Great job. All right, the next person I want to talk about is Rosa Parks. If we watched the trailer of, when we watched the trailer of The Help, from the book and the movie, The Help, we often seen many of the scenes of the buses there, and the buses kind of pulled over off to the side, not running, and everyone walking and riding their bikes. That was all done during the Montgomery bus boycott, where the African American population refused to use the buses because of the segregation that was happening on the buses. And one of the the main face of that protest was a woman named Rosa Parks. So Rosa Parks was born in 1913. So in the 60s, she was a pretty older woman. So you think older woman, petite, small, frail. She just wants to get on the bus. And she gets on the bus, and there is a white person there. And do you think she would be given a seat that the white person would get up and give her the seat? Absolutely not. He was like, nope, go to the back of the bus. That's where all the colored people sit. And so she had to walk all the way back there, and she actually was like, no, I'm not going to do it. So let's read. So Rosa Parks was an American activist in the civil rights movement, best known for her pivotal role in the Montgomery bus boycott. The United States Congress has called her the First Lady of the Civil Rights and the Mother of the Freedom Movement. So because she refused to give her seat up on the bus, they really started making all this protest and saying, hey, well, we're just not going to ride the buses anymore. We're not going to give money to this company that is going to keep treating us and being basically racist and treating us unequal simply by the color of our skin. And so you see everyone riding buses, everyone walking. And at that time, most of the bus companies' customers were the African American population because they had less money, they were less likely to own cars, and they relied heavily more on the public transportation system. But they refused, and they had this bus boycott for a long time. The other pivotal figure of the civil rights movement in the United States is Martin Luther King Jr., who was a fantastic public speaker, very charismatic, because he was a pastor at a Baptist church. So he was very passionate about speaking, but he was also passionate about love, forgiveness, and using the Bible as arguments for why all people are created equal. So Martin Luther King Jr. was an American Christian minister and activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the civil rights movement in 1955. In 1963, he gave the famous I Have a Dream speech. And we're going to look at a few quotes from his I Have a Dream speech. Here's one quote. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. What is he saying here? He's really saying this idea of equality, that all people are equal. But it is a quote from quotation marks. What is he quoting? That all men are created equal. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. That is coming from a historical document 150 years before, called the Declaration of Independence. He's using really the cornerstone of American society, saying, hey, as Americans, this is what our forefathers believed. They separated from England because of this idea of, no, we want democracy. We want people, that people are free, and there's those freedoms and liberties. And if they put those same freedoms and liberties into the Constitution with the Bill of Rights and all these amendments that they've been adding, he's saying it is true that all men are created equal, including us, and we need to treat people like that with equality and equity. He said, I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons and former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. So again, he's linking these ideas of American history, of the slaves and the slave owners, the plantation owners, and saying, hey, that the future generations, that your grandchildren, will be able to sit down together and live in a society where they view themselves as equals. That you don't judge a person by the color of their skin, but of the content of their character. And that's their next quote here. One of the most famous quotes is, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged simply by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Again, a very wise man, very charismatic speaker, fighting for that idea of we're all created equal. We should all be treated equally. So his big concept was peaceful protest, marches, peaceful protests. This idea of not wanting to use violence, that violence creates more violence, and we need to be peaceful. And one thing that Martin Luther King is really famous for is that he was assassinated. On April 4th, 1964, at a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, he was shot on his balcony outside of his hotel room and was killed. Again, just sparking more of the civil rights movement of saying, wow, you take this pastor, this minister, whose message is nothing but peace, love, forgiveness, this dream of a future where we could live at harmony and peace with one another and treat each other equally, and you take that peaceful individual and you assassinate them. It really sparked the civil rights movement after his death, became this martyr, this image of fighting for their rights. Around the same time, JFK was also assassinated during this moment of high tension. So here is a look of the Civil Rights Act. So we're going from the end of the Civil War, the creation of the 13 Amendments, all the way over to this creation of the Brown versus Board of Education, where they say we can no longer have segregation of schools, that all schools must allow all students no matter their ethnic background. So let's see what we got here. Where the Civil War ends, we have the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment. Then the Civil Rights Act gets passed in 1875. And then we fast forward all the way through the 20th century, where we have Truman ends the discrimination laws. We have Brown versus Board of Education. Let's look here at the bottom. We have President Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, where they kind of abolished slavery. The Civil Rights Act is overturned. So they started the Civil Rights Act in 75. In 83, they overturned them and started what's called the Jim Crow laws, which we're going to focus on here, which was this idea of separate but equal. We're going to separate everything and have that segregation of here's areas for blacks, here's areas for whites, but yet there are resources for both. There's a water fountain for the white and a water fountain for the black, and they should be equal. The problem is that they were not equal by any means whatsoever. In 1913, federal government supports segregation. President Wilson fails to keep campaign promises of African American voters. And so, again, this idea of the federal government supporting it separate but equal. And it wasn't until the Brown versus Board of Education where you start seeing that segregation coming to a stop. So let's ask. Following the Civil War, most southern states, as well as some border states, enacted laws that denied basic human rights to newly freed African Americans. The white minstrel, popularly known as Jim Crow, wore blackface and mocked characteristics of African Americans. The term Jim Crow evolved to encompass the laws, customs, and personal behavior that white people displayed in their segregation and degradation of African Americans. Jim Crow laws and practices in the South represented the biased racial hierarchy that was prevalent during the decades following the Civil War, with white people at the top and African Americans at the bottom. For example, during the Jim Crow period, an African American person was expected to move from the front seat of a train or bus to the seat in the back when a white person boarded. Segregated drinking fountains were common. Supporters of Jim Crow and racial segregation believed that if the two races shared public facilities, it might promote social equality, leading, they feared, to the destruction of the American culture. Also common during this time were separate hospitals, prisons, churches, cemeteries, public and private schools, public restrooms, and other public accommodations. In general, the facilities for African Americans were quite inferior, less conveniently located, much older, smaller, and dirtier. In many locations, there simply were no facilities available for African Americans, including no place to eat or sit, or no public restrooms. So, let's fill in our blanks. African Americans from all states received the right to vote years after the Civil War ended. How many years? So the right to vote after the Civil War ended, let's go to our timeline. So we have the Civil War ends, 13th Amendment ends slavery. The 15th Amendment grants African Americans the right to vote. How many years is that? 65 to 70 is 5 years. It took 5 years. 5 years. Number 3, the year blank was notable because practices of racial segregation were supported in the U.S. government. Go back. That segregation was supported by the U.S. government. If I look, I see this right here. Government supports segregation. President Wilson fails to keep campaign promises to African American, and that is year 1913. So I will put 1913 in that box. The year 1913. White citizens who practiced racial segregation during the Jim Crow law period did not want blank between the races. They did not want racial equality. They didn't want equality between the races. Maintaining separate but equal public facilities between the races was ensured by the Supreme Court case. So again, maintaining separate but equal. They wanted separate but equal. which court case was that? So I see two court cases. I see that verse lets me know that it's a court case. So I see the Brown versus Board of Education, and I see the Plessy versus Ferguson. Don't see any others. So these are my two court cases. Brown versus Board of Education overturned this one. This is my first one, and it is the separate but equal facilities for all races. So which is the court case? Plessy versus Ferguson was the court case that supported separate but equal facilities. And that ends our lesson over the civil rights movement towards the end of the 20th century here in the United States. I will see you next time for our next class.